object in life was to be Diana. That has always been her passion.
And her idea of elegance is phony to the nth degree.
So, after decades of guarded silence, Diana's own brother is reportedly saying things about Meghan Markle that have left royal experts questioning everything they thought they understood.
The first thing that needed to be done was to find somebody to write and deliver the eulogy.
Is this a careful warning, a misunderstood opinion, or the beginning of a deeper family divide, hidden from public view? As reactions spread, every remark is being examined for clues, while supporters and critics argue over what it truly means. What has changed now? So, what do you think? Was Charles Spencer sending a message? Share your thoughts in the comments, like and subscribe for more similar royal documentary stories today. Silence finally ends. For nearly 3 decades, Charles Spencer built a reputation unlike almost anyone connected to the royal family. While memoirs were published, interviews made headlines, and private disagreements spilled into public view, Diana's younger brother chose a different path. He rarely inserted himself into royal controversies, even when discussions centered on his late sister or her 2 sons. That silence became part of his identity. The fewer words he spoke, the more people wondered what he truly believed. That is exactly why recent reports have caused such an extraordinary reaction. According to multiple reports discussed by royal commentators, Spencer has finally broken from his usual approach in a way many believe indirectly touches on Meghan Markle and the ongoing debate surrounding Diana's legacy. The reported remarks themselves may not appear explosive at first glance, yet the response has been anything but ordinary. Within hours, royal experts began examining every sentence, every phrase, and even what Spencer chose not to say. Why would a man who spent years avoiding public royal disputes decide to speak now? That question has become far more important than the remarks themselves. Unlike palace officials, Charles Spencer answers to no institution. Unlike royal aides, he has no official position to defend. And unlike many commentators who build careers around daily royal headlines, Spencer has consistently avoided becoming part of the media cycle. His silence has never been viewed as hesitation. Instead, many see it as deliberate restraint from someone who understands both the family's private history and the enormous public fascination surrounding it. That history gives his voice unusual weight. As Diana's brother, Spencer witnessed a side of her life the public never fully saw. He shared experiences that existed long before royal titles, global fame, and relentless media attention transformed her into one of the world's most recognized women. Because of that connection, many observers believe his perspective carries a different kind of authority, one rooted in family rather than palace protocol. Royal experts quickly noticed that this moment felt different. Instead of another disagreement between supporters and critics of Harry and Meghan, attention shifted toward the one family member who has rarely entered these debates. Some commentators interpreted the reported remarks as a subtle message. Others argued they reflected nothing more than a personal opinion being exaggerated by public curiosity. The truth remains open to interpretation, which has only fueled even greater speculation. One thing, however, is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. When Charles Spencer remains silent, the headlines eventually move on. But when Diana's own brother appears to step forward after years of restraint, people assume there is a reason. Whether that assumption is justified or not, it has reignited one of the most sensitive discussions surrounding Diana's legacy and raised an even bigger question that nobody seems able to answer. What changed after all these years? What did Spencer truly see in Diana that the public never could? Did Meghan's connection to her sister become a powerful parallel, or a comparison Spencer quietly rejected? And when his perspective finally enters the conversation, could it completely change how both women are viewed? Keep watching. The Diana comparison. Almost from the moment Meghan Markle joined the royal family, comparisons with Princess Diana began appearing across newspaper headlines, television debates, and social media. Some people believe they saw striking similarities. Both women married into one of the world's most scrutinized institutions. Both spoke openly about intense media attention. Both became global figures, whose every appearance generated enormous public interest. To many supporters, those parallels seemed impossible to ignore, but others have long argued that similar headlines do not necessarily mean similar experiences. That disagreement has never truly disappeared. Instead, it has grown more complicated with every passing year. Each new interview, documentary, or public appearance has reignited the question of whether Meghan's story genuinely mirrors Diana's, or whether the comparison has gradually taken on a life of its own. This is where Charles Spencer's perspective becomes uniquely significant. Unlike royal commentators who analyze events from the outside, Spencer knew Diana before the cameras, before the palace, and before the world knew her name. He witnessed the person behind the headlines, the sister, the daughter, and the young woman whose life changed forever after marrying into the monarchy. His memories are built on private experiences rather than public narratives, making many observers believe he sees distinctions that others simply cannot. That is why every reported remark associated with Spencer immediately attracts such intense attention. People are not only listening to what he says, they are trying to understand what his words suggest about the comparison itself. Royal experts have noted that public sympathy and family perspective are often two very different things. The public naturally responds to visible moments of hardship, media pressure, and emotional interviews. Family members, however, carry years of personal history that the public never witnessed. They remember conversations behind closed doors, private struggles, and relationships that unfolded far away from television cameras. Those experiences can shape opinions in ways outsiders may never fully understand. As debates surrounding Meghan continued over the years, so too did arguments about Diana's legacy. Some believed Meghan carried forward Diana's compassion and willingness to challenge convention. Others argued that repeatedly linking the two women risked reducing Diana's unique story to a modern comparison that oversimplified both lives. Neither view has achieved universal agreement, which explains why the discussion remains so emotionally charged. Now, with renewed attention on Charles Spencer, that debate has entered a new phase. If Diana's own brother appears willing to speak after years of remarkable restraint, many believe his perspective could influence how these comparisons are viewed moving forward. Yet his reported remarks have done little to settle the argument. Instead, they have left royal experts asking an even more sensitive question. Does Charles Spencer truly believe Meghan's journey reflects Diana's, or has the public misunderstood his silence all along? And that is where the speculation takes a sharper turn. Were Spencer's carefully chosen words really about family loyalty, or were they a quiet warning aimed at Harry and Meghan? Why did experts focus so intensely on what remained unsaid and what happens when the next interpretation emerges? Let's find out. Experts notice everything. The most revealing statements are not always the loudest. Sometimes, they are the ones that leave just enough room for interpretation. That is precisely why Charles Spencer's reported remarks have generated so much discussion among royal commentators. Rather than focusing only on what he appeared to say, Many experts have become equally interested in what he carefully avoided saying. That distinction has transformed an already sensitive story into something far more intriguing. Within hours of the reports circulating, royal analysts began offering very different interpretations. Some argued that Spencer was simply expressing a personal view that had been amplified by public fascination. Others believed his carefully measured wording reflected years of quiet observation finally reaching the surface. Neither side could point to an unmistakable declaration, yet both insisted the language carried deeper significance. Why? Because Spencer has never developed a reputation for speaking carelessly. Over the years, he has demonstrated a consistent preference for choosing his words cautiously, particularly when discussions involve Diana, Prince William, or Prince Harry. That history encourages people to assume that every sentence is intentional and every omission equally deliberate. This is where public perception and family loyalty begin to collide. To the public, every royal disagreement often appears straightforward, with supporters quickly choosing sides and critics responding just as forcefully. But families rarely communicate so directly. Those closest to one another often rely on subtle gestures, carefully chosen phrases, or even silence itself to express disappointment, concern, or support. Royal experts suggest that Spencer understands this dynamic better than almost anyone. As a result, commentators have started asking whether his reported remarks were aimed at the public at all. Could they instead have been intended for the people closest to the story? That possibility has fueled intense speculation. Some analysts believe Spencer's comments should be viewed as an appeal for greater respect toward Diana's memory, rather than criticism of any individual. Others argue that his timing naturally invites questions about Harry and Meghan, because the broader debate surrounding Diana's legacy has become inseparable from their public story. Importantly, these interpretations remain opinions rather than established fact, yet they continue to shape public conversation. The reaction online has reflected that same divide. Supporters of the Sussexes argue that Spencer's reported words have been overanalyzed and taken far beyond their original context. Critics, meanwhile, believe his restraint makes the message even more powerful, suggesting that someone known for decades of silence would never speak without careful consideration. Perhaps that is why this story refuses to fade. Charles Spencer has not delivered an emotional interview or launched a public campaign. Instead, a handful of carefully examined remarks have prompted days of debate, countless headlines, and one lingering question that grows more compelling with every new interpretation. Was Diana's brother simply sharing an opinion, or was he quietly sending a message that Harry and Meghan were always meant to hear? For years, Spencer protected Diana's memory without choosing between her sons. But what happens when silence starts looking like betrayal? Can loyalty to William and Harry survive a decision involving Meghan? And when Diana's legacy is suddenly at stake, which side will Spencer finally be forced to confront? Stay with us. The test of family loyalty. As the debate continued to grow, attention gradually shifted away from Meghan Markle alone and toward the man whose name kept resurfacing in every discussion. Charles Spencer has never been viewed simply as Diana's brother. For many people, he has become one of the most visible guardians of her personal legacy, carrying a responsibility that extends far beyond public appearances or occasional statements. Whether fair or not, that expectation has followed him ever since Diana's death. It is a role that places him in an almost impossible position. On one side are Prince William and Prince Harry, the two nephews he publicly vowed to protect after losing their mother. On the other is the enduring memory of Diana herself, a woman whose life has been examined from almost every angle, yet whose closest family members have often tried to preserve parts of her story from becoming an endless public spectacle. Balancing those loyalties has never been straightforward. That is why many royal observers believe Spencer has spent years avoiding battles that others seemed eager to fight. Unlike palace officials, he has rarely entered debates over family disagreements, media projects, or public criticism. Remaining outside those conflicts allowed him to focus on something he appeared to value more than headlines: protecting Diana's dignity rather than participating in arguments that risked overshadowing it. But neutrality becomes much harder when Diana's name itself returns to the center of public controversy. Every renewed comparison, every documentary, every interview, and every discussion about her legacy naturally draws Spencer closer to conversations he has long tried to avoid. Royal experts suggest that remaining completely silent becomes increasingly difficult when the subject is no longer simply today's royal news, but the reputation of someone whose memory he has spent decades helping preserve. Importantly, there is no confirmed indication that Spencer intends to choose one side over another, yet commentators continue to debate whether protecting Diana's legacy can sometimes be interpreted as taking a position, even when that was never the intention. In today's media environment, silence is often treated as a statement, while carefully measured words are examined for meanings that may or may not have been intended. That reality creates an extraordinary challenge. If Spencer speaks, every sentence is scrutinized. If he remains silent, people search for meaning in the absence of words. Either way, his connection to Diana ensures that public attention never drifts very far. Perhaps that explains why this discussion feels so much larger than a disagreement involving Meghan Markle. Beneath every headline lies a deeper question about memory, family, and responsibility. The real issue may not be deciding who is right or wrong, but determining who should shape Diana's story for future generations. And as that debate intensifies, one unavoidable question begins to emerge. Has Charles Spencer reached the point where protecting Diana's legacy requires him to say more than he ever wanted to? Spencer watched the story unfold from a distance, saying little while public narratives shifted around him. Were those private reservations growing quietly all along? Did his silence conceal a conclusion no one expected? And what finally happened behind closed doors that made his position impossible to ignore? Stay glued? Behind closed doors emerging. By this point, the discussion had moved beyond a single reported remark. Royal commentators were no longer asking only what Charles Spencer had said. Instead, they began asking what years of silence might have been quietly revealing all along. Could it be that his perspective had not changed overnight? Or had it been developing gradually, shaped by years of watching events unfold from a distance? That possibility introduced an entirely new layer to the story. Unlike figures who regularly comment on royal affairs, Spencer has spent much of the past 3 decades staying outside the daily cycle of headlines. He has rarely responded to speculation, avoided public feuds, and generally allowed others to debate issues involving the monarchy. Because of that history, many observers argue that any apparent shift in his public posture deserves closer attention. Not because it confirms one side of the debate, but because it suggests that something may have reached a turning point. Royal insiders and commentators have offered different explanations. Some believe Spencer has simply become increasingly concerned about how Diana's legacy is discussed in modern media. Others suggest that years of repeated comparisons between Meghan and Diana may have prompted deeper reflection within Diana's own family. These remain interpretations rather than confirmed facts, yet they continue to shape public conversation. Interestingly, Spencer's silence itself has become part of the mystery. For years, people viewed his decision not to engage as a sign of restraint. Now, some commentators are looking back and wondering whether that same silence carried a message they failed to recognize at the time. Was he avoiding unnecessary conflict, or was he quietly observing developments before deciding whether they required a response? No one outside Spencer himself can answer that question with certainty, but its persistence shows how differently his actions are now being viewed. The contrast between public appearances and private perspective has also become a recurring theme. Publicly, discussions often revolve around headlines, interviews, and carefully crafted narratives. Privately, however, family members experience events through a very different lens. They carry memories, conversations, and relationships that are never fully visible to the outside world. Royal experts frequently point out that those unseen experiences can shape opinions far more than any public statement ever could. That is why speculation surrounding Spencer's true feelings continues to grow, not because he has delivered lengthy interviews or dramatic accusations, but because his reputation has always been built on measured restraint. When someone known for saying very little appears willing to speak at all, many people naturally assume those words reflect years of careful thought, rather than a reaction to one isolated event. Whether that assumption is correct remains uncertain. What is becoming increasingly clear, however, is that this story cannot be understood through a single headline or one reported comment alone. If Spencer's perspective has indeed evolved, it may not be because of one moment involving Meghan Markle. It may instead be the result of years spent watching Diana's legacy interpreted, debated, defended, and redefined before the world's eyes. The royal divide was already impossible to ignore, but Spencer's words may have pushed it into dangerous new territory. Could Diana's family finally shift public sympathy? Could his independence expose what palace statements cannot? And when the next reaction arrives, who will realize the balance of opinion has quietly changed? Stay tuned. One voice changed everything. By now, the story had grown far beyond Meghan Markle. What began as debate over Charles Spencer's reported remarks had become a wider discussion about the divisions that continue to define the royal family. Royal commentators argued that the real significance was no longer what Spencer may have said, but what his reported position might reveal about the relationship between Prince William and Prince Harry. For years, the brothers have followed very different paths. William has remained at the center of the monarchy, preparing for his future as king. Harry chose life outside the institution, building a new chapter in California, while continuing to speak openly about his experiences within the royal family. Their contrasting choices have fueled years of public debate, with supporters and critics firmly divided. Charles Spencer occupies a unique place within that discussion. Unlike William, he holds no constitutional position. Unlike Harry, he has largely remained outside the public disputes that have dominated recent headlines. He is neither a palace representative nor a royal commentator. Instead, his connection is rooted in family, particularly his lifelong bond with his sister Diana. That independence explains why many royal experts view his perspective differently. Palace statements are often dismissed as institutional self-defense, while comments from Harry and Meghan are frequently interpreted through existing opinions. Spencer, however, is seen by some commentators as one of the few figures connected to both brothers, whose views are not automatically tied to either side. Even so, experts remain divided over how much significance should be attached to his reported remarks. Some believe his perspective carries unusual influence because of his close relationship with Diana. Others caution that drawing broad conclusions from isolated comments risks creating narratives that extend beyond the available evidence. The debate centers on a larger question: who has the moral authority to speak for Diana's legacy? Is it her sons, each shaped by different experiences? Is it the monarchy she once served? Or is it the brother who knew her before royal life changed everything? There are no simple answers, yet those questions continue to shape public understanding of every new royal development, ensuring that Charles Spencer's reported comments resonate far beyond a single headline. What happens when one family member challenges the story the world thinks it knows? Was Spencer defending Diana's memory or quietly redefining it? And when the final pieces of this controversy are examined, who truly gets the last word on her legacy? And what comes next? Legacy beyond today's headlines. As the debate continues, one reality has become increasingly clear. This story is no longer just about Charles Spencer, Meghan Markle, or the latest royal headlines. Instead, it has become a broader discussion about memory, responsibility, and who has the moral authority to speak for one of the most influential figures in modern royal history. That is why royal experts remain divided. Some believe Spencer's reported remarks reflect genuine concern about how Diana's legacy is being interpreted decades after her death. Others argue the public has read too much into his words, allowing speculation to grow beyond the available evidence. While opinions differ, both sides agree on one point: very little has been stated directly, yet the discussion has become one of the most closely followed royal debates in recent years. This distinction is important because interpretation is not the same as confirmed fact. Throughout royal history, public perception has often been shaped as much by what people believed was implied as by what was actually said. In Spencer's case, every reported comment is all viewed through the lens of his unique relationship with Diana, creating expectations that may not reflect his true intentions. Without a fuller explanation from Spencer himself, much of the conversation will remain based on interpretation rather than certainty. One fact, however, stands above the speculation. Charles Spencer has spent decades protecting his sister's memory while largely avoiding public involvement in royal controversies. That long record of restraint explains why his voice carries unusual significance today. People listen not because he speaks often, but because he rarely does. Perhaps that is why this story continues to resonate. Every generation views Diana's legacy through a different lens. Some remember her as a symbol of compassion and change, while others see her as a reminder of the personal cost of royal life. As documentaries, biographies, and interviews continue to revisit her story, the question remains where respectful remembrance ends and modern storytelling begins. Ultimately, the debate extends far beyond Meghan Markle or today's headlines. Diana's legacy belongs to history, her family, and the public alike, making it impossible for any single voice to define it completely. Yet Spencer's lifelong connection to his sister ensures that whenever he is perceived to speak, his perspective carries uncommon weight and leaves one enduring question: who, if anyone, has the right to define Princess Diana's legacy? So, what do you think? Did Charles Spencer intentionally challenge Meghan's narrative, or was his message misunderstood? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more royal stories.